Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Inside the Pigskin. My name is Scott Morganroth, leading this broadcast, and I have a very good crew on hand today. Well, before I get to the crew, I just want to give you an overview of what we're going to be talking about. Talk about Baker Mayfield. We're going to also talk on some of the most interesting lopsided NFL blockbuster trades. You're going to really like that one, as well as notable big contracts, as well as our we'll have our parting shot segment. With that said, I'll go to my crew. Welcome back, Candy.
Thanks, Scott. Good to be here.
Jordan Long. I'll tell you one thing, my friend. There'll be a lot of Colorado in this show. Welcome back, pal.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And Mr. Opinion is back for round one. He'll be back tomorrow night after 9 o'clock on the Sports Exchange. Welcome back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for having me here, Scott.
Your pleasure, my pleasure, your pleasure, whatever. Okay, Rick. You get the nothing like getting tongue tied. It's okay. I'm used to it anyway. So
I got your tongue.
Yeah, I do that all the time. What do you want to know? But anyways, Van Melfar Jr., well, our resident former NFL player. Welcome back, Mel.
Great to be back. How's everybody doing?
Well, how's everybody doing?
We're all doing well.
Everybody's doing good.
All right. Well, we have a silent night. No, we better not. You don't want to hear me sing, otherwise you guys are going to go deaf anyway. So. With that said, we don't have a silent night, but we do have a Hollywood debut, and we'll go out there and talk about Baker Mayfield's first act as a Ram. What Baker Mayfield did is he had the longest 98-yard drive in the final 2 minutes over the past 45 NFL season. So with that said, I'll go out there and lay it out for you. Baker Mayfield and Sean McVay pulled off the impossible on Amazon Prime, a 17-16 win over the Raiders. As a QB had less than 2 days to prepare. Mayfield gets the tryout. Let's start with a coach who believes in him. Cleveland Browns and Carolina Panthers. He was in there before. Those were toxic situations. With that said, Rick, some thoughts about the Baker.
Well, I wish he showed some of this when he was with the Panthers because he was awful. And I saw pretty much every game. He was awful. So it was no shocker they released him. And, of course, first game, 2 hours or 2 days to prepare, whatever, and he has a comeback win. So good for him. But also at the same time, this is the Raiders, and they have blown, 5, 6 double-digit halftime leads. They're the biggest disappointing team in all the NFL, in my opinion. And so good for Baker. Great game. Finally, we saw a great game on Amazon Prime. I was getting ready to cancel my membership with him. But good for him. But same old Raiders, they keep doing this over and over. And but I'm happy for Baker because unfortunately, with the Panthers, he was just awful. So I'm glad to see him kind of get this rejuvenation in his career.
Jordan?
I was to say, it was pretty amazing to watch Baker Mayfield do what he did. The Raiders pinned them at the 2-yard line. I know I saw Sports Center, which I didn't realize happened during the game, that they were all celebrating, oh, we won the game. Well, except for you let Baker Mayfield have a minute 57 to go down the field. And if you look at the Raiders, like Rick said, this is just a combination of their season. They've had double-digit leads. They've let it go, and it just makes me wonder how good of a coach really Josh McDaniels is. As for Baker Mayfield, great for him. He was there for less than 2 days. I don't know how much of the playbook he actually knew, but he got to know his teammates pretty quickly and actually drove down to score the touchdown. So I'm happy that it actually worked out for the Rams. Will it work out this week? Who knows? But at least he got that first win off of his back with the Rams.
Turn over to Mel.
Yeah, I thought, we talked about this a little bit last week. I really didn't expect Baker to play a lot. And they put one of the plays up. And the play was like a paragraph long. And it was so wordy how he was able to – and this is, I like Baker Mayfield. Let me just go back and preface it and say that. I liked him in college. I think he's a gutsy type of quarterback. I think he's a quarterback that can rally the troops and get people and be a leader of men. But what he did was truly amazing. It shows you how smart the guy is. because I'm watching. First we see the other quarterback was in, and then I don't know if he got hurt or they made a decision they were just going to bring Baker in, and to be able to actually know the route concepts, know where everybody's going to be. I mean, he looked like he'd been in that offense, for a couple of months. And to be able to do what he did, is particularly on that last drive, to do a 2-minute offense. I mean, that takes a lot, and it just shows you how intelligent Baker is. In number one, and he made some great throws. And I think with Baker, he's had a lot of different offensive coordinators since he's been in the league. We always know that the best player goes to the worst team, and they're not just the worst team out there performing, record wise. There's dysfunction sometimes within the franchise, and I think that was a situation that he found himself in Cleveland. I mean, obviously there's dysfunction there. If you have Baker Mayfield there and you decide that you want to go trade for Deshaun Watson and guarantee him his entire contract, and you don't even know what his status is going to be. Then he goes to Carolina. I don't think, things weren't working out there real well. You got a coach there that was on the hot seat. He really didn't know what his future was going to be like. And now he's got a guy like Sean McVay, and they're kind of like two peas in a pod.
Right.
And I think it was a great pickup on the part of the Rams, because we don't know what Matthew Stafford's future looks like, especially with this neck injury. We see what happened with Peyton Manning. He was never the same player after he had that neck surgery. But I was very, very impressed with Baker. But again, like I said, I like Baker, so I can't say I expected that. There's no way in the world that I expected him to do what he did, but I'm glad he's in a situation where it looks like he's going to have an opportunity to thrive.
All right, I'll turn it over to Candy.
Baker Mayfield was the Heisman Trophy winner. He's a winner. He knows how to win. Now, maybe with the teams that he was on and the coaches, the teammates, he didn't have the right mix. I give him a lot of credit. Coming in 2 days after joining the team, playing the game, most people didn't give him a chance. But see, I think that's when sometimes teams or players excel, is when nobody expects them to do well. They can let loose and they can have really good games. Now, with that being said, I hope he does not have a good game this week. He's going to go against my Packers.
Well, I kind of suspected that. Before I go and get to my comments, I just want to let everybody know that Inside the Pigskin can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, go to youtube.com and please subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel so you can see us visually. We have a lot of great streams on there, as well as some of the live things that we do on remote locations. With that said, I'll put it to you this way. Baker Mayfield and Sean McVay are a good fit. This is a good chance for him to get a tryout. And yes, I will go ahead and follow the lead of Mel. A change of scenery, Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford situation injury-wise. And this could be the potentially a good start of a relationship, knowing that Sean McVay has done some great things offensively. I could actually see Sean McVay postponing retirement if he had any ideas to take on the challenge and bringing Baker Mayfield along. I really like the move all the way around. I really do. And the fact that he had some exponential success with a very limited playbook and I like Sean McVay. He only been here 5 or 10 minutes for crying out loud. That's all. And he's done this. And everybody across the country said, holy moly, what did you do, Sean? You drank the Baker Kool-Aid. Well, good first act. And I guess it's only fitting that it was a Hollywood debut out in Los Angeles. So I was pretty inspired by the whole thing. And yes, Rick, I understand your logic that you wanted to go ahead and cancel your Amazon thing until they spit out a good football game that kept you interested for at least another week. All right. Well, you know what?
Scott, let's acknowledge Will is in the chat room. He says hi. He says even though Baker struggled with the Panthers, but he's always liked Baker, and he hope he can eventually start somewhere in the next few years. He's liked him since Oklahoma, and he says Baker plays like he has a chip on his shoulders.
Very good. Well, you know what? When you put intelligent comments in the chat room, we acknowledge them. We put anyone in there, but it would certainly help with the stuff that you're putting out there. Well, more power to you, pal. All right. With that said, I want to talk about some NFL blockbuster trades, Dallas and Seattle style. And I'll tell you, everybody on this panel, probably even Candy, because she saw me research it. We'll talk about the Dallas Cowboys, the mastermind Hall of Famer Jimmy Johnson, not even in the Cowboys Ring of Honor, but who would ever forget the Herschel Walker trade, which is the largest in NFL history, that occurred on October 12th, 1989, to the Minnesota Vikings that included 18 players and draft picks. The Cowboys at the time were 1-15 in 1989. They traded their best player at the time while Walker was supposedly the missing piece. They needed to make a Super Bowl run. Dallas proceeded to win 3 Super Bowls. So I'm going to preface this again because there's a lot to digest here, okay? And again, the date, October 12th of 89, the Minnesota Vikings involved a trade that included 18 players and draft picks, and the Cowboys were 1-15 in 1989. So they traded their best player, which was at that time Walker, and turned out to be the missing piece, not. And Dallas went on to win 3 Super Bowls. Now, here's the thing about the Minnesota Vikings, though. They never made an appearance in the Super Bowl, and these picks were used to draft Emmitt Smith, Darren Woodson, Russell Maryland, in what is considered the Great Train Robbery ESPN 30 for 30 film. So, my goodness, if you can get Emmitt Smith, Darren Woodson, and Russell Maryland in that trade, and then bring him into Troy Aikman's crib, you got a pretty good thing going there. So, all right, Mel, give us your recollections on the first one, and I have another one that'll follow.
Yeah, that was a big trade. I mean, back then running backs were making all the money, and for Jimmy Johnson to have the type of foresight at that particular time to pull off that type of trade. I mean, it was highway robbery, to be honest with you. When you look back on it, Herschel was somewhat in a decline at that particular time, and to be able to trade one guy, I forgot how many total players it was, 11, whatever 7.
I mean, there were 18 players in this trade, and I think Darren Nelson went to the San Diego Chargers in that deal, but there are 18 players, I think, in a trade, and Walker goes one place, and look at everything Dallas got returned. Go ahead, Bill.
Set Dallas up for that dynasty, for those 3 championships in 4 years. So, I mean, that was a huge trade. I mean, Jimmy got a lot of draft capital, got rid of a high-priced veteran that was limited as far as what he was going to be able to do in that offense that they were running at that particular time. Minnesota was happy at the time because they thought they were getting the piece that they needed in order to make a championship run, not realizing that, that kind of, sealed the fate for that franchise. And obviously we know what happened with Dallas and what they were able to do with the draft picks. The key when you have one of those kind of drafts, what do you do with those draft picks? You got to make sure that you utilize them and utilize them properly and get players that are going to be very productive for you. And that's something that they did. Jimmy Johnson was very good at identifying talent. And, I remember that, just being like, wow, can't believe that they got rid of Herschel Walker, but you look at what they got back in return, you're like, it was a good trade. I mean, I remember, the same thing, the year before I got there, they traded away Eric Dickerson. And, I know all the draft capital that the Rams were able to receive for that trade. Obviously, they hated to lose Eric Dickerson, and Eric, they didn't want to pay him, and Eric wanted to get paid. Period. Point blank. End of story. Eric was about his money, and I think it worked out real well for the Rams. I don't think Eric Dickerson achieved a little success over there in Indianapolis, but nothing like the success that he had when he was running behind that line with the Rams.
Well, so you often wonder about records that'll never be broken. This will be a record that never gets broken when you have 18 players in a trade. So, all right, I'll turn over to Mr. Opinion.
Nobody's going to allow themselves to get fleeced like that again.
Yeah, don't worry, Mel. We got another one that may compare to it. So go ahead, Rick.
Oh, I remember that trade. I mean, Jerry Jones made some very bold, controversial moves. I mean, he fired Tom Landry, brings in Jimmy Johnson, who did great in college with the Hurricanes, but unproven in the NFL. They went 1-15. They looked terrible, and they get rid of their best player. But, I mean, they got Emmitt Smith. I mean, and then Michael Irvin. I mean, all the people they got from this trade. They won 3 Super Bowls and Vikings didn't do anything. And Herschel, as Mel said, was not that same elite player that he once was during the early times. But it's just there's just some trades like that you do. The Cowboys were totally rebuilding, and it worked for them. Not so much for the Vikings, unfortunately. But good for the Cowboys. They made history, one of the best dynasties ever. Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith, Russell Maryland, of course, Troy Aikman got there. And if it wasn't for that trade, they wouldn't have any Super Bowls, and we wouldn't be hearing about them boys are back. And like I got to hear every year. But good for the Cowboys. 3 Super Bowls. And not much more you can say about that. So I think it worked out pretty good for them. Not so much for Minnesota.
All right, Jordan.
The thing about the trade is, it was 18 players, but Dallas when you get draft picks, you don't know how that's really going to help your team. It's an unknown commodity. They knew they had a commodity in Herschel Walker. They traded him to Minnesota, and what did you get? You got one of the best running backs ever to play this game in Emmitt Smith, and it definitely worked out for Dallas. I mean, who would ever thought that, the trade would have worked out the way it did, and it ended up working out. And I'm happy for Dallas because they got, a trade that worked out. Sometimes it doesn't really work the way they want it to. And obviously this one did. So pretty good for Dallas to actually rebuild that team and win 3 Super Bowls. Emmitt Smith, Troy Aikman, and just, they were the dynasty of the 90s.
All right, I'll turn it over to Candy.
It was a blockbuster trade that a lot of the Dallas fans, when they did it, didn't understand it, didn't like it, but look at how it turned out. So again, it sometimes is the short-term, long-term effect. Short-term, they really didn't think it was going to do well, but look what it did. It built the dynasty. Long-term, Dallas made out highway robbery.
The only thing I'll add to it, number one, is Barry Switzer got a championship ring he didn't deserve thanks to Jimmy Johnson. And number two, Jerry Jones, do me a favor. Put Jimmy Johnson in your ring of honor, because if it weren't for him, you wouldn't have jewelry. You could have all the big yachts and all the big toys, a big stadium. But if it wasn't for Jimmy Johnson, you wouldn't have 3 pieces of jewelry, because that to me is the biggest fleece job I have ever seen. And there have been a lot of them. But I'll tell you what, that'll allow me to transition to yet another one. Okay. And this one, Jordan Long, I'm going to lead off with you on this. And you may not like it. I get it, but I'm going to have to do it because in journalism, we have to do what we got to do. Okay. Russell Wilson, March 16th, 2022. I'm sorry, Jordan. Please come on future broadcasts. I'm not trying to hammer you too bad here tonight. But it is what it is. This is the news business. That's why you have Sports Scoop 1. But anyways, Russell Wilson, March 16th, 2022. Seattle traded a 4th-round pick to the Denver Broncos in exchange for 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a 5th-round pick to go along with quarterback Drew Lock, defensive lineman Shelby Harris, tight end Noah Fant. And then on September 1st, the Broncos decided, well, we'll go ahead and keep Russell around a little bit longer. And he signs a 5-year contract worth $245 million extension. How does it look right now for the principals involved? The Broncos are 3-10, Seattle 7-6 with Geno Smith. All right, Jordan, I have to let you lead off, pal.
Of course you do. Honestly, I was really, really excited for Russell Wilson when the trade was made. I thought, oh, this is the franchise quarterback we've been looking for. Obviously, it didn't work out so far. The one guy that I was really disappointed that the Broncos let go was Shelby Harris, a great interior defensive lineman that would, rush the passer, knock down passes. So I wasn't happy to lose him, but I figured, we got rid of Drew Lock. He didn't do much. Then we got Russell Wilson. The thing is, though, this year, you can say it hasn't worked out. We gave him a huge contract extension, which we didn't have to do. We could have waited until the end of next year to do it. But it's honestly, it hasn't worked out so far this year, but I'm not going to put the blame on Russell Wilson yet. I still think that there's hope because he still can throw the long ball. He just has to be a little bit smarter. And I can tell you right now that his offensive line isn't there. I'm still going to stand pat on this trade. I'm still happy that he's my quarterback, but I'm still going to wait and see what happens the next few years. But I do think we rushed him with the 5-year, $250 million contract.
Okay. All right, Rick.
I am a huge Russell Wilson fan. I was happy that he was moving along because Seattle just wasn't the same anymore. Denver, they needed a quarterback, and on paper it looked good. I know everybody wants to blame Russell Wilson and say that he's no good. I blame Nathaniel Hackett. He's an awful, awful coach. He has no clue what he's doing. He looks absolutely clueless. He doesn't know anything. I mean, I've never on paper, I was so excited for the Broncos. I said they're going to go to the playoffs, and I think they'll do well. Injuries have crushed them. Having a incompetent coach, and I think he'll be gone at the end of the season. They have a new owner now who's going to be the richest owner. Sorry, David Tepper. But he's going to be the new richest owner. He's probably going to clean house. I wouldn't be surprised if Hackett's gone. George Patton might be gone because he's the one that brought Hackett. He's the one that signed Russell Wilson to this long contract, which I think was very premature. Should have done it at the end of the season, see what happens. So I still have hope in Russell Wilson. I think he's still a great quarterback. He's with an incompetent head coach, the injuries, and sometimes new surroundings. It takes a while. So I'm still like Jordan. I'm still positive about this. But in 2 or 3 years, if Russell's struggling still, then yeah, it's a bust for the Broncos, and it's hello for the Seahawks.
Yeah, and you know what? We'll also shares the same thing that Nathaniel Hackett has also been coaching priority. There's no question about it. So yeah, it sounds like to me a lot of the responsibility is on Nathaniel Hackett. So he'll be a one and done head coach. I'm going to turn over to Mel.
Yeah, it sounds like Nathaniel Hackett's a little over his head right now.
Right.
As far as the head coach is concerned. I mean, Russell didn't forget how to play. I've been watching Russell Wilson play since he was in college at Wisconsin, and I was always very impressed with Russell Wilson, the type of player that he is or was at that particular time, and the type of person that he is. And for it to be going for the wheels to fall off the way it has is really mind-boggling. There is some disconnect there. I don't know if it's the system or maybe Pete Carroll knew something. I mean, everybody wanted to let Russ cook. Well, that wasn't really working, letting Russ cook. And Russ was taking up so much of the salary cap that they weren't able to get the depth that they needed in other positions or get the type of players that they wanted at other positions. And now they no longer have that on the books. And, you got a quarterback, who's making a manageable salary. You can build around him. And, that I think you're going to start to see a little bit more of that. These quarterback salaries are eating so much of the salary cap that you can't even get a decent backup. I mean, the Rams had a guy that was a backup quarterback, man, that he couldn't throw the ball. I mean, it was terrible. I know, it was a great story. He had broke his neck in college, and I think he might have transferred somewhere. I can't remember. And then, he's playing in the NFL, but the guy couldn't throw the ball. I mean, he was just a running quarterback, basically. And I'm like, man, you guys can't get a better backup than that. I mean, you look at a lot of the backups that are in the league. I mean, you've never heard of them. You don't know where they went to school. God forbid something were to happen to your starter and you had to go to the backup. Only place that you might have a backup that you might know is somewhere where the quarterback, is on their first contract, is on a rookie contract. Otherwise, if it's a veteran, other than, the situation they have in Green Bay, of course. But primarily, you don't know who these guys are. But, it's unfortunate. I was expecting big things. That they thought this was the missing piece. That Russell Wilson was going to be, he's going to take them to the promised land. And it has been nothing short of a disaster.
Turn over to Candy.
I go back to the like Mel said, back to when Russell Wilson played for Wisconsin. Did he gel right at first? Probably not. But he started to gel. He took that team far. It was exciting to watch. I think, honestly, that it's a matter of time. He's been sacked and hit and rushed. And, I mean, he's had how many injuries himself this year as well that he's had to deal with. Anytime a quarterback is rushed as much as he is in a new offense with a new coach, it's a recipe for disaster. You know, he's got offensive linemen that aren't protecting, that are injured. He's trying to overcome a lot, and I think it takes time. I think it honestly, we've talked about how you have to look at trades short term, midterm, long term.
Right.
Obviously, in the short term right now, it's not working out. But is it all his fault? He's not the only player on that team. It takes the team to be successful and work. Like, let's face it, we all think Brady is the GOAT, but look what Tampa Bay is, only 6-7 this year as well.
Right.
So I think you got to give it time.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll just close out this topic by saying that once Nathaniel Hackett gets relieved of his duties, there was only one coach that the Denver Broncos should make a phone call to: Eric Bieniemy. Period. I say he does. Eric Bieniemy has earned the right to, number one, become a head coach. Number two, he's playing for a team like the Chiefs, where he's seen the Broncos twice a year, and he's worked with Andy Reid. I think it's about time that Eric Bieniemy gets that job, let alone the fact that the area of Jordan, you know well, is familiar with the University of Colorado. I don't care who's available. There's only one guy that should go out there and get that job, and that's Eric Bieniemy. I really believe it. He should have been actually hired a year ago. I mean, the guy's been passed up on other opportunities. Maybe guys get passed up on other opportunities because it's not meant to be, but this is one that should be meant to be. A former Colorado.
I can tell you,
I'm calling
say
Sean
one
Payton.
thing. He couldn't do any worse.
I'm calling.
He couldn't do any work.
No,
I'm calling Sean Payton if I was the new owner of the Broncos. That's
well,
what I'm
okay,
calling.
but I'm just saying, and that's okay too, Sean Payton. But if you don't get Sean Payton, Eric Bieniemy should be the guy you do.
He should have been a coach 2 or 3 years ago.
I actually wanted Eric Bieniemy in this coaching search, actually.
Right. Well, that's my point. You guys are making my point. Thank you. Okay. Reality
Right
is
now, you want anybody other than the guy you have, without question.
Well, that's true, Mel. Yeah, no, you're right, Mel. I mean, let's face it, Nathaniel Hackett thing hasn't worked out in Denver. It's inevitable, like Rick saying, and Jordan are saying, going to clean house the way this debacle's turned out. But I'm going to say it one last time out there. Eric Bieniemy should be the next coach of the Denver Broncos, and Sean Payton will be able to pick his type of job. For all we know, Sean Payton can wind up with the LA Chargers working with Justin Herbert. This guy can pick his job, and let me tell you, not only going to pick his job and get paid a lot of money. So that's all I have to say. Eric Bieniemy should be walking the sidelines in Mile High and as a coach of the Denver Broncos. All right. Well, you know, Mel, you did a heck of a job talking about what people are getting paid. So you know what? I'm going to segue over to you, Mr. Farr, and we're going to talk about some notable big contracts. And my goodness, let's go back to Russell Wilson, 5 years, $243 million. How's it work for Denver? 3-10. But now I'm going to add a couple more people to this. Aaron Rodgers, 3 years, $150 million, or 5-8 this season. Sorry, Candy, but you looked at him earlier, so it's no surprise to you anyways. And last but not least, Kyler Murray, 5 years, $231 million. Carted off the field last night versus New England. All right, my resident NFL guy. You can comment on all three of these contracts if you want. Nevertheless, they're not good, and they're paying a lot of money, and you can't afford a backup. Go ahead, Mel.
Okay, who was the first one? Run that back to me again now.
The first one's Russell Wilson.
That's not looking that good right now.
Right.
There's a reason why Pete didn't want to pay him, and I don't think it has anything to do with Russell Wilson's ability or anything like that. I just think when you're building a team, when you're constructing a team, there's only so much money that you can afford to spend at that position, regardless of how great that player may be. It's coming to a time now. Look at running backs. I mean, they barely get paid more than kickers. And at one time, they were the highest paid players on the team. Now they're right. I mean, they're next, right above kickers and punters now, as far as where their salaries are, as far as what they're thought of. When you look at constructing a team, now quarterback is the number one, the person that eats up most of the salary cap. Well, when you're constructing a team and you have that much money devoted to one position, it's very difficult to get the quality players at other positions, and also it's very difficult to get depth at other positions as well. And I think you're going to start to see a trend downward, I would think. as far as quarterbacks and the type of money that they're paying these guys, because we understand the quarterback is an important position, but there are only so many Tom Brady's and Peyton Mannings and but Patrick Mahomes, maybe even Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers. Not everybody's that person. Not everybody can put the team on their shoulder and carry the team to a championship. Not everybody's built that way.
Right.
Some guys you just have to build around the player and what the player can do, whether it's a Jared Goff, whether it's a Jimmy Garoppolo. Even Drew Brees had a lot of help. Drew Brees could do a lot of things. He was talented, but they ran the football pretty well over there with Sean Payton. So I think they're going to have to start looking at the way they construct teams now, because those salaries are just getting ridiculous. And I think, the Ravens are, they're kind of, with Lamar Jackson, I mean, they're kind of standing their ground and for ownership, that's good. For the player, that's not so good. But there's only so much you can devote to that player. Otherwise, you just really start messing up the team, the depth and the quality of players that you can get at various positions.
Yeah, no, you're so right. I mean, in each of the cases that you have here, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, and Kyler Murray, you allocate that much money for that particular position. What's left? I understand certain guys are worth what they are, but you know what, Jordan? I'm going to let you take over from here. What's left, Jordan? You see how big these contracts are. It's not like we have to single out each player. I mean, the numbers, forget about singling out each player. Do some math, 243, 150, 231, and you're probably, $600-700 million on these three particular players. All right, Jordan, take it from there.
The thing is, I look at the salary cap now. Who had the most money before these guys? Well, it was Patrick Mahomes. They also have Travis Kelce, who also has a big amount. And I look at it going, why would you pay that much? I think those two players, if I'm not mistaken, have 30 or 40% of Kansas City's salary cap. And now you look at it now, they set the bar. Now you look at it, and these quarterbacks are getting paid, what you said, $250 million or not per year, but throughout the lifetime of their contract. It's like with Russell Wilson, the Broncos could have waited until next year to actually get a contract extension with him, but they didn't. Now I'm looking at it, how are you going to get free agents? Not many of these free agents are going to come cheap. So how are you going to build the team around him? That's the case for also Arizona. And obviously, if Aaron Rodgers sticks around, how are you going to build a team around them? You need money to build a team around these quarterbacks for them to be successful, especially Denver, who needs an offensive line. It's just ridiculous what the quarterbacks are getting paid. But again, that's what the bar has, been set.
Yeah, I'm astonished at the salaries that are going into that position. I really am. I realize, to me, that if a guy can get paid more, power to him. Everybody knows the length of an NFL career isn't very high, probably lower than all the other major sports. But again, the way the NFL is constructed, you have an active roster. 46, I think, are allowed to play in a day. You have 7 that you carry at 53, and then 10 more on the practice squad, I believe. So you get a lot of money there. So the reality is, roster construction is what you're looking at. You better make sure you got a lot of money to go around. All right, Mr. Opinion, I know you're probably chomping at the bit. And Rick, bear in mind, I'm not asking you to comment on each and every quarterback if you don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
It's the sum of the whole and the whole of the sum in terms of what the quarterback position is being paid and with marquee guys. Okay, so I'll let you take it from there and say what you feel you want to say.
Well, the agents are running the sports show. That's how these guys are getting so much money. It's all about the Scott Borases going around and saying, well, if he threw for 50 touchdowns, so, hey, and, only 5 other quarterbacks have done that. And he's the first to do this and the first to do, he should get all this money, even though he only played 1 or 2 years. With the Russell Wilson thing, to me, it's too early. I just think it's Nathaniel Hackett. He's an idiot. For Aaron Rodgers, I'm sorry, Candy, he's an idiot too, and I think he's declined, and I think he's going to retire. Kyler Murray, I never was sold on him. I hope he's doing well. I hope he makes a speedy recovery. I just don't see him being this franchise quarterback, and he seems more concerned about Call of Duty than he cares about the playbook. I think he's very immature and needs to grow up. I wouldn't give him a dime. But for all the quarterbacks, that's just how the market is now. The average NFL player is only 3.5 years, very short time. So they're going to get as much money as possible, and the agents know that. And there's such a desperate need for quarterbacks in the NFL. Like Mel said, you don't see a lot of Aaron Rodgers or Peyton Mannings or Tom Brady. I mean, those are generational quarterbacks. So if you're like a good quarterback and you're consistent, and if you can throw like 20 touchdowns and even be like a game manager like an Alex Smith, you're going to get a lot of money because so many teams are desperate for quarterbacks. I mean, they're looking at the CFL now and all this stuff, and they're getting quarterbacks like out of Germany. They're looking at the Euro League where they have football. I mean, it's just a desperate need for quarterbacks right now, and they'll overpay. And if you have a great agent, you're going to make lots and lots of money.
All right, Candy.
I think one of the things that we also all have to look at is not only what are we paying the players that are playing, but what dead cap space are we paying? Because like the Chicago Bears, $91 million is dead cap. The Packers are only playing 28 million. Like that's a big significant difference that we have to look at. So not only is it the contracts that we're giving to guys right now, and I get like Aaron Rodgers, he wants how many years? They want these contracts drawn out so that they're getting paid for years. The teams have to really look at it from their perspective. If I'm paying you $50 million 4 years from now and you're no longer even playing or you're injured, like you have to take that into consideration when they're doing those contracts, because you don't have the margin for error is so little because you're paying such big contracts that you can't afford to miss on big contracts.
Yeah. The only thing I'll say about this subject, then we go to parting shots, is this. After what we're seeing with these three players and potentially other ones, the owners are going to get smarter, wiser, and they're not going to spend it nearly as much because they realize, let's face it, we have our limitations. We know what we got to do. And I can see that this is one of those things where, okay, we've had several bad contracts handed out. Rick and I have often, and Jordan have often talked about on baseball, that you can sign a 10-year contract and the first so many years on the front end are good, but then you really get killed on the back end. So, and I think the same trend is most likely to continue with these quarterback contracts. So I don't believe that you're going to see this long term. Owners are going to get smarter and there are going to be fewer of them. But that said, okay, we're going to go over to our parting shots. And you know what, Rick, you lead off, please.
Well, we had some big breaking news last week. Finally, Brittany Griner was released. So happy to see her released. Of course, she was a political pawn, and people are all happy and celebrating, and I'm happy too. But you know what? There's also other Americans in other countries, like Paul Whelan, who's been in Russia for 4 years. And I don't see people wanting him out of there. People were upset that he wasn't in the exchange, and I'm glad to see Brittany out of there. She needs to be out of there because there's other Americans in there as well, not only in Russia, but in North Korea and all these other countries for petty, stupid little things. And so before we start celebrating that Brittany's home, we need to bring back more people like Paul Whelan and other people who are suffering in there. And because they're not celebrities or because they're not multimillionaires or in the public eye, people want to forget about them. So we need to bring Paul Whelan back and all these other political prisoners back home. And that's my parting shot.
Well, my shot to you is well said. Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it. Okay, Jordan.
I'm going to go to baseball with, Wilson Contreras going to St. Louis, signed a 5-year, $87.5 million contract. Why in the world did the Cubs just trade him at the trade deadline? I know the trade deadline passed. They were all hugging. Him and Ian Happ were hugging, thinking, oh, we're going to get traded. They didn't get traded. But yet you lost him for nothing. And worse, he's also your biggest divisional rival. I just don't understand why the Cubs didn't talk to him or even traded him for something, at least get some prospects back. Just really confusing that they let him test free agency. I don't know if they talked to him, but his heart was set in St. Louis. And if it was, at least he's going to a team where he can actually contribute to a winning ball club because the Cubs are not going to be there. They're still rebuilding.
Well, the thing I'll say about St. Louis is that's a heck of a baseball town. I'll never forget the time when Mark McGuire got traded there from the A's, and I'll go there and see how it works out. It didn't take Mark McGuire very long to sign that long-term extension. And everybody that goes into St. Louis, they don't leave there. That's a great baseball town. And, Wilson Contreras, the latest example of that. All right, Mel, what's your parting shot?
Well, how about our hometown Detroit Lions? They're sitting there right now at, I believe it's 6-7. Opportunity. A lot of people, prognosticators, the guys that do this stuff for real, are saying that they have an opportunity to. They look at them as have an opportunity to legitimately make the playoffs. They won 5 out of the last 6 games. Really should have won 6 out of 6. They should have won that Buffalo game. Should have won that game on Thanksgiving. And if you look back, there's probably a few more games that they should have won that they let go and that they lost in the fourth quarter. Except for one game, I remember they got blown out. But I mean, realistically, they could be a 3-4 loss team. They're playing hard. They're playing with a lot of passion. They're playing for their coach. I watched Hard Knocks this year. I like Dan Campbell. I like what he stands for. I really believe he's the right coach for that city. He's a hardworking blue collar type guy. That's that city. And I think it resonates well with the players. Jared Goff is playing well. I'm looking forward to the Lions, these next 4 games, see what they're going to do and see if they can finish this thing out and get in the playoffs. And lastly, want to extend my condolences out to Mike Leach's family.
Yeah.
I'd never met him, watched him a lot of times on TV, and was always admired him. Thought he was he seemed to be a very eccentric guy. Seemed to be a great guy to play for. Probably not for me because he runs that air raid offense. They throw the ball a lot. I probably had to switch out and be a wide receiver and move on to the defensive side of the ball. But want to send my condolences out to his family, and may God grant them peace and understanding during these very difficult times.
All right, Candy.
So my parting shot is, and this is going to go against what I not against what I'm going, but normally I don't comment. We're talking Lionel Messi in the World Cup final. They made it today. They beat Croatia. He's had a long career. The one thing that he has not gotten is a World Cup title. So kudos to him for making it to the final. I hope, you hope for people that have such a passion for what they do that they can reach the ultimate goal, what their goal is. And one of his goals is to win the World Cup. So kudos for getting there. I hope you can do it.
Yeah, I'd love to see athletes go out on top. Lionel Messi pulling for you, but the one I enjoyed seeing go out on top was John Elway during Super Bowl 33, Jordan, when I covered that game, and I was part of that post-game press conference. So very well done there. So yeah, I got a couple things I want to say as well. So I'm pulling for you, Lionel. First of all, Mike Leach, rest in peace. He died of heart complications. What a shame. I love the line he had about marriage advice. Just elope, for gosh sakes. That was number one. And then another line that he talked about his obituary. He said, you know what? Somebody else is going to write it. I don't care what it says. All I know is I'm going to be dead and I won't know anything about it. That shows you the creative, insightful candor that this guy have. I wish I would have met him, but unfortunately, 61 years of age taken for us too soon. Now, my real parting shot, okay? So rest in peace, Mike Leach. It's a Heisman Trophy is an absolute farce. And let me spell the word farce, F-A-R-C-E. Candy, you might want to hashtag that one later, okay? And you'll understand the psychology behind it. First of all, the 4 finalists were quarterbacks. Stetson Bennett of Georgia. I would have liked to have seen him win it, by the way. C.J. Stroud of Ohio State, Max Duggan of TCU, and Caleb Williams out of USC, who did win it. To me, if you have a trophy where you have 4 quarterbacks, you've lost my attention, because I think a lot of the other players should be acknowledged, whether it's running backs. We've seen Charles Woodson, Desmond Howard, and other people win it that were not actually quarterback and whatnot. But you know what? To me, if you continue to make this a quarterback award along with the other quarterback award, I'll lose interest pretty quick. So I think the folks of the Heisman Trophy Club, you got it wrong this time. And a lot of the voters that put these four guys in, I think that was bad for quarterbacks, one winning this particular trophy. But I will say this much, though. Just because you win the Heisman Trophy doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a great NFL player. Google the history and you'll find out a lot of them. Maybe sometimes you're better off not winning it anyways. And I'll take it over to UCLA where Troy Aikman didn't win it. And how did that turn out? Oh, 3 Super Bowls, right, Mel? So it did pretty well. So just because you win the Heisman Trophy doesn't mean you're automatically going to win it all. So with that said, great show tonight. I think we touched on a lot of different types of topics. So you know what? I'm going to ask everybody.
But you know who won it that year, though, right?
Who?
I think it was Barry.
All right. So what? Barry Sanders won it. That worked out, but he's a running back. That even validates my point.
He had 2,600 yards. He should have won it.
Yeah, but you know what though? I have no problem with Barry winning it at all because they're every now and then you
I
get
don't like the Heisman anymore. I don't even watch it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's a quarterback award. It should go to defensive player.
It's the ESPN award to me.
Yeah, I want to see like a defensive. I want to see a tackle win it.
Yeah, ever since Tim Tebow, I heard about Tim Tebow when he was like in 11th grade from Kurt Herbstreit talking about wait till Urban Meyer gets Tim Tebow up here, and so I mean it is a ESPN award. I don't even watch the Heisman anymore. I just saw who won it. Okay, all right, that's it. I used to when I was younger. I used to enjoy watching the Heisman, but now it's such a hype award. They talk about it so much all the time. Heisman watch, front runner for the Heisman. Everybody. I don't really, to be honest with you, the best player this year was probably Stetson Bennett, to be honest with you. Right. But he had nothing. He had no push behind him whatsoever. None. But that's the best story. I mean, he's played most consistently all year long. He's, whether you want to say he's, the best player on the best team, whatever you want to say. But to me, he should have won the Heisman.
He's a walk-on.
Yeah, right. In my opinion, I mean, the guy, perseverance. I mean, what a story. I mean, started at Georgia, walked on, left, and went to community college, came back. I mean, last year they kept calling for the other guy to play. They did not. I mean, Kirby did everything he could not to play Stetson Bennett, but he couldn't keep him out of there. I mean, It's a great story. Great kid.
Well, what I do remember, because we did watch it in the morning because my other half put it on. But at least if I'm going to get anything out of the whole thing, is Caleb Williams did make one statement that I thought was pretty good. I got the trophy, and you 3 guys are playing in the college football playoffs. So, and Stetson Bennett is a different story.
I mean, he's the truth now. Don't get me wrong now. I mean, he can play. I mean, what he did to my poor Bruins was just that was not.
Yeah, nice. But you know what? The truth of the matter is like we've all been talking about. It's the quarterback award, and what you said too, Mel. It's an ESPN award with all the hype. So everything you said there, Mel, is totally a bullseye in my eyes. So with that said, all right, this is an opportunity to let everybody know how they can get a hold of them, and we're going to lead off with Jordan.
You can find me here on the South Florida Tribune on Tuesdays, usually 106 Stitches, but obviously we're doing Inside the Pigskin on the Sideline Sports Network Mondays during the NBA season. I am on the NBA Carousel hosted by Megan Price. On Thursdays, Alex Fleming's NFL Carousel. I also have my own show Under Review that you can see on Fridays on the Sideline Network, as well as I have a blog that I write Mondays through Thursdays with podcasts on Fridays at sports-scoop.com. And also follow me on Twitter at SportsScoop1.
And you know what? Thanks for bringing this up, Jordan. Obviously, a programming note. What we're doing right now for this week and next week is we're deciding to go with Inside the Pigskin. Things are slowing down a little bit on baseball anyway, so we're going to have Inside the Pigskin not only tonight but next Tuesday as well. So if you're looking for it, we'll have it down, and then Inside the Pigskin will return to its normal day on Thursday after the first of the year. So Jordan, thank you very much for bringing that up. Very much appreciated. So baseball will return after the first year on Tuesday. For now, we're going to go with football. All right, Rick.
You can find me on my website, www.charlottebats.com. We have a petition on there. Please sign it. We're trying to bring Major League Baseball to Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm also on Facebook at Charlotte MLB, Charlotte Bats Baseball. My Instagram is Charlotte Bats, and I'm on Twitter, Charlotte Bats Baseball. I'm also on LinkedIn under Rick Curdy. And if you have any comments or questions, you can email me at cltbatsbaseball@gmail.com.
All right. I also want to reach out to Will Vogel. I appreciate all your comments in the chat room. Much appreciated. All right. We'll turn it over to Mel. How can everybody reach you?
All social media, you can reach me at Melfar Jr. It's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and the other one, Twitter. You can reach me at Melfar Jr. and find out what we have going on for the youth down here in Atlanta and also up in Michigan at melfar.org.
All right, Candy. You know what? Why don't you give them all of our contact information, and then you can close out this show, Candy.
Okay, well, I'll start with mine. You can find, I'm typically a photographer, so you can find some of my photography at southfloridatribune.com. You can see some of Scott's writings. You can see all of our broadcasts there. But most importantly, if you're watching this, there's a little red button in the lower right corner that says subscribe. So please subscribe to the South Florida Tribune's YouTube channel. You can catch all of our shows. Mondays, we have Fire Up Michigan. Tuesdays, you can see twice a month, Fire Up Wisconsin or 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. Wednesdays is Sports Exchange. Thursdays is Inside the Pigskin. You can follow us at Tribune South. If you want to advertise, you can call Scott 954-304-4941. You can also hear this broadcast on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcast. You can also see me Tuesdays on the Sideline Sports on Three Chicks in a Pod or Chicks and Salsa. And I think that's Scott. Oh, Scott's on Sideline Sports on Basket Bros and Pundit's Pundit. Scott, did I miss anything?
No, you're doing all right. The show that preceded us was Fire Up, and with myself and Mark Mancini, we do a little bit of work together as well. So, and we're going to have a lot more lead-in shows going into next year in 2023 that will also add to what our lineup is. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Next year, you'll probably see me doing a lot more one-on-one interviews. I really love doing it. Been doing it for 43 years and continuing to surround ourselves with the best crews possible. And the relationship with Sideline Sports has been nothing short of outstanding. So, Candy, you're outstanding too. You covered a lot there and much appreciated. And all you guys, you know, Jordan, Rick, Mel, you guys are outstanding and you're so much appreciated. So with that said, hope you enjoyed this edition of Inside the Pigskin. On behalf of Candy Ablink, Jordan Long, Rick Curdy, and Mel Farr Jr., my name is Scott Morgan, Rock Motor City Man. Mel, thank you for joining on this edition. And we will catch you next Tuesday night. Everybody, please be safe and happy holidays. And we'll get to say it again next week. Happy holidays. But be safe anyways. Good night, everybody. And thanks for joining us.
Good night.
Good night.